Hey guys, this is Rick at Exposure with SoCal Home Photo, and we've got a great guest today. I've got local real estate agent Joseph.limo here, and we're going to spend some time with him and talk. Joseph, can you introduce yourself and share a little
Yeah,
bit about
happy
your
to.
background in real estate?
For sure. And Rick, thank you for having me on today, man. I really appreciate it. I'm Joseph Limo. I've been a real estate broker and agent here in Southern California for 20 years. Started when I was fairly young. I've also evolved to now be in a position where I not only get to coach agents, but teach real estate at a collegiate level as a professor here at Mount SAC locally. So that's been a short story about my career.
Big kudos to SAC.
Yeah, exactly.
I went to SAC. So, what inspired you to become a real estate agent, especially here in Southern California? And what keeps you passionate about it?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. So, interestingly enough, I was in college and I was going to school to be an elementary school teacher.
Wow.
I know, I thought I had a life hack of because, as you're growing up, you realize like time seems to go faster. I remember when I was really young, like every holiday, it was like a 1 month experience, right? Christmas was like a full on month. Easter, everything that was happening felt like it was getting celebrated for a full month. And as I was entering adulthood, it felt like they were maybe a week, in some cases, one day, and then we're on to the next thing. So I thought I have a life hack. One of my favorite years of school was third grade. So I was like, I'm going to go become a teacher. I love teaching anyway. And I'm going to teach third grade and slow life down. Well, midway through school, I found some opportunities to do professional speaking. And I realized that I had a lot more ambition. Simultaneously, I understood on the education side, a lot of people to progress there go into administration and they're no longer in the classroom. So that negated my whole intention for being there. It just so happened that I have an aunt and uncle who sell real estate in San Diego. Michael and Elaine Gallagher, the Gallagher and Gallagher team, they were, absolutely crushing it during that time. We're talking massive producers. And so I thought, I really love that they get to work together. I saw the autonomy that they had as far as their life. And so they were the ones who inspired me to get into the business.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I've got a couple questions about what you just said. One, who was the teacher that inspired you in third grade?
Man, the sad part is I don't remember her name. It's really unfortunate. And
Really?
what really is a bummer, Rick, is because I was only in her classroom for, I want to say 3 months maybe before we moved from the Whittier area to Rancho Cucamonga.
Okay.
But she, even though I don't remember her name, she truly impacted me in a very positive way.
That's cool. That's funny. One of my favorite teachers was my third grade teacher,
Nice.
Mrs. Triber. I'm sure she's not listening. That was back in upstate New York. So,
Oh, wow.
anyhow, um, okay. And the other one was the public speaking. What kind of public
Yes.
speaking were you doing?
Yeah. So during school, I actually worked for Bank of America. And because my mom graduated high school, went to Bank of America, had an entire fruitful career at Bank of America, and retired from there. Like we know that that really doesn't even exist anymore, right?
Right?
People entering
Yeah.
one company and having an amazing career with upward mobility in the whole nine. So during my college days, I went to work for Bank of America. I was a customer service rep on the phone. So people calling about their checking account balance and savings account, whatnot. I was that person answering those calls. And during that time, Bank of America was making a pretty significant transition to a different approach to customer service. And what they wanted to do was collect some people from across the country internally to go out and do 4 hour presentations to start to change the culture of the entire bank. And I just decided to give it a shot, was selected as one of those few, and fell in love with being on stages. That was an opportunity to be all across the country. So 1 week I'd be home doing my regular job. The next week I'd travel somewhere in the country and put on usually 2 to 3 of these performances per week where there was four of us doing it, and we would be in front of audiences of anywhere from maybe 100 up to 1,200. In
Wow,
fact,
that's
our
pretty
first
awesome.
one was at the Pantages Theater with a massive crowd.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
cool, dude. That's
it
cool.
was
So it
super awesome.
really kind of laid the foundations of real estate, right? That public speaking and being on the phones for sure, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
if you're a real estate agent, if you're not on the phones, you're dying, right?
Right.
That's what they say. So, okay, cool. So, what about some market insights? How would you describe the current state of Southern California real estate?
If I could boil it down to one word, it's confused. I think everyone is unsure of what's happening and why. We've had this run up of interest rates, right, due to the inflation that we experienced during the time of COVID. And inflation apparently can be fairly sticky, right? That's what the feds look like they're having a challenge with. And so as we continue to see these, hopes and or ideas of the Fed funds rate starting to come down, even though they're not directly tied to mortgage rates, they're a close cousin. As we're starting to see some of these Fed rates starting to come down, they're not impacting the 10-year bond, which is a tighter control of mortgage interest rates, in a way that's significantly dropping our interest rates. So a lot of people are confused. So that's the way I would describe it. Now, what I'm starting to find, especially like in the last quarter of this year, which is 2024 when we're recording this, I'm seeing that a lot of people have kind of decided, I've waited long enough. I have ideas to, move into the bigger house, move into a smaller house, whatever their moves are. And they've had such a hard time with it over the last, 2 years because they're sitting at a 2.75 or 3% rate and they can't wrap their mind around making this move and walking into a 7% mortgage. So I think at this last quarter of the year, we're starting to see people finally say, you know what? Rates are rates. I need to move on with my life. And so we're starting to see that volume, but I also anticipate when inflation's under control and when we can start to see mortgage interest rates probably closer to the 5% or less range, we are going to see a massive amount of volume because it's been pent up for a couple of years now.
Yeah, yeah, it's been crazy. And I think people are so stuck on what interest rates were just a short while ago, right? And they're like,
Yeah.
well, if I can't get 3%, I'm not buying a house. And I don't know about you, but I bought my first house probably in 1999. Yeah, I was paying like 9.25%, 9.75%. Of course, the home cost was a lot lower at the time, but the interest rate was insane. And I was told at the time, this is a great rate. Everything's kind of relative, but I think those super low rates just kind of ruined people's mindset about it, right?
Well,
So,
I think for so long too, because if you look at historically the rates that have been tracked basically since 1972 when we started to track them across the country, even with the low rates that we had for years and years, the average rate was still in the eights. So even in this moment, we're below what the national historical average has been. But try telling that to someone who's sitting on a 3% rate, right? It's just a very different thing when it's their personal experience. And what I'm sharing with a lot of buyers right now, Rick, is number one, make your move now. Because if you can afford the home and find the right home, even though you're paying a higher rate, the beauty is you can time interest rates. I know a lot of people are trying to do that, but they're doing it wrong. You're trying to time a rate and buy a house at the same time. You have too many goals stacked on top of each other. The best way to time an interest rate, if that's ultimately your goal, is when you own the asset. Because if I own my home right now, like I do and you do, Rick, when rates come down and they look amazing, all we have to do is pick up the phone and call our favorite lender and game over. We've locked in that perfect rate that we've been waiting for. So that's
right.
really the right strategy of timing rates.
Yeah, and really California real estate is the gold standard. Like,
Yeah.
there's never a bad time to buy real estate in California. It's better than putting your money into gold or the stock market as far as that goes, which is different than the entire country, I'm sure. At least that's, what I learned when I was a real estate agent. Of course, I'm a few years away from that now, but for
And
sure.
Rick, I'll even tell you there is data to support exactly what you just said. And that data is really easy to understand. We have not built enough homes in California to support the population and its continued growth in our state. So when you have an imbalance of supply and demand, there's way more demand than supply to satisfy. That's when you're going to have that massive premium on real estate because we don't have
Right.
enough houses for the population. So everything you just said is completely substantiated by data.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if you even too, like if you look at all the other states that people have been running to, Texas and Florida, their prices are dumping dramatically
Mhm.
now, right? Because they have so much supply. You're
Right.
right. You're absolutely right. So, how about this? What trends are you seeing in terms of home buyer preferences and neighborhood growth?
Yeah, like in terms of like where opportunities are to buy, is that what you mean?
Yeah, and as far as
What are
that,
buyers
and
looking
like
for?
what kind of homes are people really looking for now, or is it just a number?
Yeah. No, I think ultimately a lot of it is a number, but I will say that people are becoming more hypersensitive to homeowners association fees in addition to special taxes. A lot of people will call them Melrose tax. That's a special kind of special tax, but there are communities all across Southern California where we have some really substantial special taxes because the community's newer. There's new infrastructure like new schools, new sewers, right? And those bonds have to be taken out to pay for these massive projects to make sure we can have more housing there. But the homeowners ultimately pay those taxes in special taxes. So I'm finding that yes, it's a number, Rick. Most certainly you're spot on, but there are two major switches that people are looking at turning off, and that's the HOA and the special taxes if they can be avoided.
Yeah, I know in a lot of cases they can get buried in those. I don't know. Yeah. Anyhow, okay, so let's see. How do you think rising interest rates are impacting the market?
Yeah, I
You
think
kind of
that they are.
touched on that a little bit.
Yeah, I just think that it's done its job, quite honestly, Rick. And what I mean by that is when the feds look at inflation, and if we're looking at trying to offset demand, right, to try and halt the skyrocketing prices of real estate, one of the main levers that you have is that interest rate, right? The access or the cost of money. So when you raise that cost of money, it's going to start to tamper down the amount that people are interested in buying because they're going to pay a larger expense to borrow that money. So it's done its job in that way. However, with our significant lack of housing, it's not really done the job that maybe a lot of people wanted. And not, most sellers or owners didn't want this, but a lot of people wanting to enter the real estate market wanted way more affordable housing in California, and they're not seeing it. And this is why I said earlier it's confusion. They don't understand. Even with rates this high, prices haven't fallen down. That's what's supposed to happen. And the factor that they just didn't have access to or realize is that there just isn't enough homes. So even to this moment, we are literally in the holiday season when rates are super high. We just had an election and we have a incoming president. And this is not a political statement, just in general, when there's a change in presidency, a lot of people are on pause because they want to see what happens. We have a perfect storm, and yet people are still putting their home on the market. And as long as they price it correctly, have very effective marketing, and have a strategy, they are seeing their homes still go under contract relatively in a short period of time, a week or two, very easily. So, yeah, despite
Again, I
all the
think that
chaos, still
yeah,
works.
yeah, and I think that again, it's a lot attributed a lot to the fact that we are California, right?
Hmm.
That gold standard we talked about. It's always going to sell. There's always going to be value. So, yeah, for sure. So, what are the top three things a homeowner should do to prepare their home for a sale?
Yeah, that's a great question. Top three things that any home seller should do. Number one, in my opinion, this is a really effective way to figure out what needs to get done to your home. And you can have a real estate professional do this, or just someone that you know that doesn't live at the house to come and just take a look around. As homeowners, we get so complacent on things, not because we're doing anything wrong or we're, not paying attention. It's just things become wallpaper to us, right? So there could be some wood rot on the door trim on the exterior, like I have in my house. I was looking at this morning, and man, it's been there for years and I don't see it anymore, right? Because it's wallpaper to me. And having someone else come with a fresh perspective, I think, is really, really important. Just so that way you can start to see. Obviously, every homeowner knows some of the things that they want to do or need to do before they put their home on the market, but get a perspective for somebody else as well, because they're going to uncover some things that you just never even thought of or completely forgot about. The second one I would say that's really key when you're going to sell a home is professional home staging. I think that if you don't have a home at least looked at by a professional stager so they can give you direction on what they would do, then I think you're really missing some massive opportunities in two different ways. And I'll touch on both of them in a minute. What I think most people don't understand about home staging is they think, well, I don't want some person to come in here and make me move all my furniture out so they can move in new furniture. I still live here, right? And that's a misconception. Amazing stagers, the best in our industry, Rick, they will use 90% of the homeowner's existing furniture and then add to it. So it's not about decoration, right? So you don't have to empty out your house, and it's not that this stager is going to come in and say, I hate your style. That's not what they do. A professional home stager, yes, may make things a little more appealing to what the buyers are looking for in this moment, right? So it's not about style, it's about their ability to engage buyers based on what the buyers are looking for. And then the third thing that I think is really key when it comes to staging that people need to understand is their magic is in accentuating space. Couldn't even get that word out. But if you ever go to see a new home builder and you see their model homes, if you really pay attention, their furniture makes no sense. Okay. You're not going to live that way with a television and then the sofa right up against the wall where the TV is, where you'd have to turn your neck. Like, it doesn't make sense. But when you're standing in that room and taking it in, it looks beautiful and it makes it feel like the space is optimized. That's what a great stager can do for a home. And there is so much data out there to show on a national level when a home is professionally staged, it can often sell for 10% more than if that same home has not been professionally staged. Be very careful here, sellers. I did not say, and the data does not point to, if you stage your home, you'll sell for 10% more than everyone else. It's you versus you. If your home is professionally staged versus it not being professionally staged, it'll likely sell for 10% more. So staging, I think, is really, really key. And that's the second one. And then the third one, obviously, is once you have that home ready for presentation, now it's time to leverage the highest level of quality when it comes to professional video and professional photo, and making sure that even though you have all that, which is, that's your world, Rick, and that's why you are such an asset to every home seller in, the world. But then how does your agent know how to deploy those assets thereafter? Because everyone just thinks, oh, hey, you should hire me as an agent. I'm going to hire Rick because he's the best. He's going to do an amazing job with video and photo. And that's awesome. And that should be done. Absolutely. But does that agent know how to deploy those assets? That's really where rubber meets road for the homeowner to really experience all the fruits of those activities.
Right. And when you say plan, you mean marketing. How are they putting
Bingo.
it out there?
Absolutely, man. Like, consumer direct is such a big thing. I mean, think about it. You can go to dinner right now and see a family not looking at each other, but they're looking at this, okay, sitting across from each other. You have to learn how to leverage this. So all of the deployment of those assets need to be going consumer direct to get them fired up to come see that house.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100% with you on that. Stagers are super important. You see it in a lot of the higher end markets, and I don't think enough agents in the middle to lower end really leverage that. And when you guys are representing our biggest asset, right? I mean, a home sale is probably one of the biggest sales a family are going to have, with whether it's a sale or a purchase. It pays to invest in getting the most out of that
And I think
investment.
everyone would agree with that.
Yeah.
Agents, consumers, you name it. But what they don't agree with when it's time is the investment, because it does cost money, like, to market effectively and make sure that the biggest asset that we have is sold for the most amount of money. It requires an investment in not only the right people to do the work, but a right process to make sure that we get the end result. And hey, let's just be clear, like, a lot of home sellers don't like the idea of paying money up front to make sure their home gets sold. And a lot of agents don't like that either, right? But at the end of the day, like, the way that I tend to manage that, Rick, is like, look, that's what my compensation is for. If I can't get the job done and reimburse myself when the sale is done, then I don't have any business saying that I'm the best agent to sell your house. If I can't put my money where my mouth is, then I shouldn't have much to say. So just a tip for a lot of consumers out there to make sure they're picking the right person.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, let's see here. What else do we have? What advice would you give to first-time home buyers looking to purchase in this area or this region?
Okay, region. Yeah, that's an interesting question then. So number one, I would make sure that obviously, and everyone says this, but I think a lot of people fail to really understand this. The first thing is they need to make sure that they're crystal clear on financing. Okay. That is always step one, and it's step one for a reason. Yes, there's more homework there. It's a pain in the side to get all your, bank statements, blood type, all the things that a lender needs to approve you. But when you can walk into the home purchasing scenario with clarity on not only what your max qualification is, but more importantly, what the number you feel comfortable with and how that equates to a purchase price, now you are in a position to really go out there and compete and win. So that's ultimately what we're trying to do with financing is make sure our consumers are very clear on exactly what they can afford, not necessarily the most they can pay, right? But what feels right for them and their families. And then we can address that in a purchase price. Now we're ready to go out there and hunt. So that's number one. Number two, I think it's extremely important for home buyers now to understand that the real estate landscape has changed dramatically this year. For you to go and look at a house in the past was as easy as just walking into an open house or calling an agent or hitting up Zillow. I just want to see this home. Moving forward and the changes that have already happened, for an agent to come and show you a property now, you have to enter into a contract with them that they're going to represent you in some capacity, or else they don't have the ability to just open the door for you anymore. Okay. Now, that there's a lot there. We could spend an hour talking about that. And we're not going to do it, Rick, but it could be as simple as they're going to represent you on that one home, or they're going to represent you on any house that you buy in the next 3 months. And if you don't know what you're signing, you could be at massive, massive risk. So you have to understand how on the buy side, real estate has changed. That's the second one. And then I would say the third one, because you asked specifically about the region, is take some time with a great real estate professional that can help you understand the dynamics of how we're continuing to grow in Southern California and how you might strategically place you and your family for some upswing in the market, if that's important to you. Now, at the end of the day, it's always about the consumer's goal, right? And if they need to be in Alhambra next to mom for all the reasons necessary, then do that. But if you have the fluidity to be somewhere a little bit different and you're trying to maximize the growth in your housing investment, then take a look at where trends are, where things are continuing to grow. Because I tell people all the time this, Rick, in our lifetimes, we're going to see housing, in my opinion, starting to build all the way out to Palm Springs and all the way up north to Las Vegas. A lot of that empty land is going to need to be eaten up. For what reason? The same one we said earlier. We don't have enough housing in California. You're not going to build more in downtown LA. It's just not going to happen. So
Right.
if you can place yourself for some of that growth, you might be up for some long term, it's not going to happen tomorrow, but some long term massive wins.
Yeah, no, I agree. Especially too with the ability to work remotely now.
Mhm.
And if people can continue to do that, I think they're going to see a lot of value moving out, like you said, with the expansion for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, what else we have? Oh, and the don't for sure is don't buy a new car or finance
Oh,
anything
man.
big before you close escrow.
My favorite one, Rick, it didn't happen to me. Okay. And I'll add this one caveat in addition to this one, but if you're going to work with an agent on the buy side, do a buyer's consultation first. That will uncover the level of professionalism, expertise, and really the leadership model that agent's going to offer you. Because at the end of the day, you're hiring someone's ability to help you get from where you are to where you want to be. So, with that said, this didn't happen to me mainly because it's part of my buyer's consultation, but it's happened to another agent that I know really well. Their buyer bought all their furniture a week and a half before closing. And unfortunately, they owned furniture when it was all said and done and not a home to put it in.
Yeah. They got it on sale, right? They got a great deal
Yes,
on the
that's
furniture.
exactly
They could.
right. Couldn't resist. It was a summertime one. I think it was a 4th of July sale because it wasn't a Christmas one. I remember it was summer.
Yeah,
Yeah, unfortunately, they shot in the foot their own transaction. Yeah,
yeah. And
rough.
it doesn't even have to be furniture. I remember one of the first buyers I ever worked with. I don't know, the wife snuck out and did some like shopping for like clothes or
Oh,
something.
wow.
And we had just built up their credit, and she made a major purchase on the credit card, and my lender contacted me, hey, what's going on with this? So that was a fun fire to put out. That's kind of
Yeah.
what agents and loan reps are. They just put out fires all day long, man. They wind up having to like pay that off immediately, right? And then
Hmm.
even that messes with their FICO scores. It's so volatile, and I don't think buyers understand that, right? It's
Yeah,
crazy what.
finances in general are like this intricate algorithm. And that's why it's so important that if you have a great loan professional that you're working with, please just do what they say.
Yeah,
If you're unsure, call and ask them first.
yeah, absolutely. And underwriters are like their own, they answer to no one, right? It's we
They are the
see
kings
some of
of
the
the castle.
crazy
Yeah.
memes about underwriters. All right, what else we have here? Are there any hidden pitfalls or misconceptions that buyers and sellers should be aware of?
Man, there's a lot. I think the major pitfall for sellers is that you have to be really clear about the market you're in and not the market that you've been hearing about or was. This is where I see two things happening. Number one, a lot of sellers overvaluing their property because of what happened in the summer or what happened to their neighbor, which has been 11 months ago now, right? And then number two, being really cognizant that if you approach agents that way, like if you try to hire an agent that way, now, I would never operate this way in full fairness because I don't believe in it. But unfortunately, if you come at a couple of agents and say, "How much can you sell my house for? How much?" What you're asking for is for the person to give you the most outrageous number and they win. Well, that's cute. That's the one you hired. But now what you've done is you've probably positioned yourself to be with an agent who's going to have to come at you in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and start honing down on getting that price to where it ultimately needed to be. Right. So listen to the data and make sure that you're working with an agent that's number one, going to provide you great data and help you unpack it. And number two, who's not afraid to tell you the truth.
Yeah,
A lot of times sellers will say, well, I don't like that answer. I want to go with more money. Well, guess what? They end up selling for probably less than they could have if they would have done it right the first time.
right. And stop listening to all your family members and your cousin. That's one of the
Amen.
reasons why I want to do the podcast is like people are so misinformed about things or just from social media or whatever, right? Always talk
Yep.
to a professional for sure.
And
Um,
then for home buyers, Rick, especially in a market where we're competitive, one of the biggest pitfalls is, they figure out that budget and what it looks like at a purchase price, and they start shopping for that highest purchase price. And when a market's competitive and you see people, offering $10,000, $15,000 over asking price as an example for the homes that you absolutely love, one thing that you can do is adjust down the price range that you're looking at so now you can be that competitive person. You could be the go out there to be the one that wins. And so I think that's a big pitfall that a lot of buyers run into. They have a lot of frustration. And again, make sure you're working with an agent who's going to tell you about some of these things and not necessarily tell you you're wrong, but at least give you the chance to question your own decisions. That's a really powerful way to help guide somebody.
yeah, and I think it really helps if your buyers or sellers are teachable, right? They
Mhm.
have to be open to the process because if they're not, it's going to be painful for everybody and it may not even go through, right?
Yeah.
Like how many obviously you educate your buyers and your sellers, but like how many agents do you talk to that this buyer won't listen to me. I've been, taking them to see 50 homes. We've bid 50 homes. They keep trying to undercut it or this, that, and the other, and they just won't listen to them, right?
Here's
So
what I think what's happening there, Rick, and I'll tell you one other item that I see happen often is one, a lot of buyers don't recognize like they're gonna have buyer's remorse during the process. Even if it's a brand new home, I promise you, I sold new homes. Okay. When we entered contract as a new home builder and it wasn't going to be done for 9 months, I knew I'm going to have to resell this home to the same buyer 4 times. Okay. So even if it's a brand new home, you're going to have buyer's remorse. More likely than not, it's going to be the day that you do your home inspection. But guess what? Number one, every buyer has that same experience, so it's not unique to you, home buyer. Okay. And number two, just know you don't make decisions when it's highly emotionally charged. If you're melting down because there's some significant issues that were found and you are going to walk away and ultimately you do and it was the right thing, that's fine. Don't decide standing in the home inspection. Sleep on it. Let yourself come off the emotional high, be it positive or negative, and then let like a more concise thought process guide that decision. Okay. And then I really think that the other like really big problem that we see out there with a lot of these buyers and whatnot is going to be where they are working with an agent who's just going to do whatever they say, right? And not help them get clear on their own goals. So a buyer's like, hey, I want to buy a house and I want it to be in a good school district because we're going to have kids and I need it to be somewhat close to mom. The neighborhood's the most important thing. And then they go out there and, like you said, they're listening to Uncle Frank, and Uncle Frank says, whenever you're going to buy a house, you always offer them 10% less than they're asking, right? And so they're going out there with these conflicting goals and not understanding why they're looking at 50 homes, getting outbid every single time. And that sometimes I really fault the agent for. Like, sit down with your client and help them figure out the prioritization of those goals. Everyone wants a good deal, and I can help you find a good deal, but it's probably not in the neighborhood, nowhere near the proximity in a horrible school district, but it's a great deal. But if that's not your ultimate goal, okay, let's put prioritization in what you're actually looking for. If it is next to mom in the school district and what have you, great. If we can get a better deal out of that, that'd be great. But let's not lose sight of what you're ultimately trying to accomplish in terms of your priority buyer, not the agent, you as the consumer. And a lot of times it just takes an agent knowing how to help them crystallize and prioritize those goals.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think one of the reasons why my real estate career ended was I just lost my patience in dealing with buyers, man. So anyhow,
Well, it takes a passion, man, in anything
it
that you do.
does.
I mean, look, I'm sure there was a lot of professional photographers and videographers that lost their way, right? Because it wasn't their passion. I've heard your story, Rick. It's inspiring, man. I almost feel like we need to switch this thing around and let me interview you because I think what has led you to your career here is incredible. And it's that passion that drives you that ultimately leads to not only the longevity, but like that highest level of quality as well. And I know, like for me, it took me as a real estate agent about, I'd say, about 8 years in the business to finally land on what was really driving me. And what that did is it put it on rocket boosters. And what I finally landed on is that my purpose, like in life, is to help others achieve their goals. That's when I look back at my childhood, early adulthood, and like everything that really like intrinsically adds value to me, it's when I've had a small role in leading someone to help them get to what they wanted. That's what drives me. I just happen to sell real estate. And so that's my vehicle to do it. So I can look at, as a human being, like some of the foundational things that I value and point to why my career allows me to fulfill that purpose. And I think if other agents can find that real estate gives them that vehicle, they're going to last. Because you're right. If this career just doesn't help them fulfill their purpose, it probably won't work in the long haul.
Yeah, no, I agree. I
That's
need
not
to
wrong or
be,
bad. It's
I
just
need,
it
no,
wasn't the same thing.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to be creative and creating things, right? And that just wasn't my passion. Absolutely. As much as I loved real estate and the whole, there's just something about it, right? But yeah, I agree with you on that. What about, let's see, can you share a story of a memorable property or transaction that showcases the unique character of the area?
Of the area, that's an interesting one. Man, I have a bunch. Let's see. So I think that when I was back in the distressed time of our market, it really was insightful to see, and this is a time in my career that helped me to really appreciate outside of my own experience, because I think all of us can understand this for ourselves. But then when you drive past neighborhoods and see that every light on in a house, it's the same thing, it really changes you. But back in the REO days, right? Because when things started crashing in 2008 and 9, I made a very strategic move over to the REO side of the business. And Rick, the main thing that drove me there is because I saw people getting kicked out of their homes. And what drove me to be on the front line there was that I didn't trust anyone else to approach that person with the level of care and sincerity. I saw a lot of people, Rick, I've had it happen to me in my life back in those days, where it was a little more rough and curt and short than I think people deserve. And so what inspired me to go out there and be in, I mean, the worst place that I could ask for, right? Because I allow myself to emotionally engage. But I thought, I'm not going to let a bunch of people lose their homes and have this experience where they get that knock on the door with someone who's going to just treat them like they're not good enough. So I wanted to be out there and give that care and try and do it and honor them the best way that I could. But what I really learned from that, and this is what I mean by like locally, when you take the time to listen to someone who's figuring out cash for keys of their home that they've lived in for 5 years, 15 years, man, in some cases 30 years, what you realize is it's not the walls, man. It's not the walls. It's the neighbors. It's obviously the memories and their family. They feel like they're almost going to start losing a family member because that is the space. And think about this. That's the space where they've had their existence and all the beautiful moments and the, consistent moments of like their peace and where they unwind, like they're losing that space. So when you really understand how that's true, if you look outside and like see all the houses, even in your neighborhood or when you're, driving down a street, it's been my experience that that's true for every single house that you pass. And so like I think when it impacts you that way, you look at houses differently, not only when you're walking through it, and showing a home for sale, but just when you drive down a new neighborhood and you see some kids out front or you see someone in their garden, like it hits me different now. Like that's where this human being is living their experience. And if you think of it that way, it's like, man, that's a really powerful space in that sense.
Yeah, no, that's pretty insightful. I never really looked at it that way, but you're absolutely right, man. Absolutely. Let's see. What are some of the challenges you faced in the industry and how did you overcome them?
Man, that's an excellent question. Okay, my biggest challenge in the industry is twofold. Number one, and I think most agents can feel this at some time in their career, the shiny object syndrome. I think most of us as real estate professionals, until we've either learned from the right person or just had enough time in the industry, we think we have to and want to do everything because that's what we do as agents. We do everything, right? And the problem is, number one, we don't understand that if without proper focus on the right things, we're not going to learn and do right, that right activity, and we're not going to do it for long enough. I wish someone, when I started in real estate, taught me the difference between a lead indicator and a lag indicator. Because when we enter the business, it's like, go door knock and you're going to sell a house. Selling a property is a very long, far away lag indicator. And so many agents are running around in their lives, running their business, looking for closings to like show up in their life. So how do you get from A to Z without knowing the path to get there? And that's why it's all over the place. And sometimes it'll happen. It's great, but then how do I make that happen more consistently? And I think understanding the importance of monitoring and being crystal clear about your lead indicators is going to help you get there. Okay. So what does that mean? What are the right activities that are going to lead you to building new relationships with the right people who will ultimately lead to more transactional volume? Right? So could be phone calls, open houses, but so many agents go, well, I tried that and it didn't lead to a closing. It's like, you're not looking at the right thing. The win Was you doing the right activity? And if you understand the incubation period of any strategy, that'll help you to calm down that you did one open house and didn't get a closing from it. You weren't supposed to. If you're doing open houses on a very, very high level, you should be averaging one new client for every three open houses. Now, a new client doesn't mean a closing, it's one new person to work with, buyer or seller. Okay. And that new buyer or seller may not do something for a year. But if you do this consistently throughout your career, and let's say you're doing three open houses every month you're adding one new person to work with in your pipeline. Now, you may say, well, what if they don't do something for a year? Yes, I get that. But think about a year from now, and you've been consistently doing it. This is where you have that ongoing proper business flow in your pipeline to lead to consistent income. Okay, so that's one of the major ones for me, Rick, is like that shiny object syndrome and not knowing what to do and where.
Dude, I'm so guilty of that. That sums up my entire real estate career. Shiny
Totally get it,
objects.
man.
This one's got to work over here. This one's got to work over here. I saw it online. So yeah.
Well, I think it's like so much immense pressure, right? And then look, our industry, some of the biggest winners around the real estate industry are the ones who sell us on every new shiny new object, right?
Absolutely.
Because we're like, look, squirrel, right? And then we throw money at it. So, being cognizant of like a proper business plan and then build out all of your strategies from your own blueprint, meaning what are the seminars you're going to attend? What are the new, technologies you're going to integrate? Do they come back to your own foundational blueprint? Because if they don't, it's a shiny object. And then after, the right period of time, usually a year, if you want to make adjustments to your blueprint, fine, then you can go chase those new objects because they're part of your plan.
Yeah. Stick to the plan. Absolutely.
And then I'll tell you the second biggest thing that, was hard for me in my career was playing real estate. And I would say for the first 5 to 7 years of my career, I was playing real estate. Okay. Full stop. What happened, Rick, was my wife and I were starting to have little ones again. And we decided that when we had our next child, she would, because this is what we decided as a family, would leave work and raise them until they were at least in elementary school, like be a stay-at-home mom. And we were really excited about that. That was our personal, goal and preference. And so my wife was pregnant and it hit me. Wait a minute. In about 6 months from now, I'm the only income. And I went to one of my mentors, a gentleman named Julio Cardenas. He owns Century 21 King in Rancho Cucamonga. To this day, he's one of my favorite mentors in this business. And he told me, Joseph, you need to stop playing real estate. Burn the ships, man. If you're going to make this work, be committed. And it hit me. That was one of the biggest shifts in my career right there was I stopped playing real estate. Like, hey, I love this and I'm going to keep doing it. If anything does now, I'll just figure something else out. And it was like, no, I committed. I am a real estate professional. This is my career. That was a major shift for me after that.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see here. So, where did you grow up, and how did that shape your approach to real estate or your career?
Yeah, that's actually a great question, man. So I was born in Pomona. I'm sorry, Fontana. My sister was born in Pomona. I was born in Fontana at Kaiser, but we lived in Whittier. So my early childhood days were in Whittier, and then in third grade we moved to Rancho Cucamonga. Okay. Rancho Cucamonga was the wind tunnel back then, all right? I used to blow over in my big starter jacket. I'm a cowboy fan, my big starter cowboy jacket used to fall over in the wind. Or we jump on our skateboards and go right down Archibald, having that wind propel us, man. It was a lot of fun. But I grew up in Rancho Cucamonga. And interestingly enough, my aunt and uncle that I mentioned before that were in real estate that inspired me to get into the business, they were in Encinitas, La Jolla area of San Diego, North County Coastal. Their office specifically was in Del Mar. So when I started in the business, I actually moved down there to some of the most exclusive and expensive real estate in the country. And it's obviously, if anyone's been to North County, coastal San Diego, it's gorgeous, right? It's a beach community. It's amazing. And oddly enough, every moment that I wasn't working and I had time, where did I go? Right back home to Rancho Cucamonga. And what's interesting about how that shaped my career is number one, it helped me to figure out that even though something is the most expensive or the most beautiful in most other people's aspects, to me it wasn't the area that I wanted to sell. It's not wrong or bad. I just know like I want to be with, people that I grew up with. I want to service families that I was most accustomed to. And I'm sure the people who live in La Jolla and grew up there feel that exact same way. And I love that for them. But the other thing that was really great, Rick, is that I saw what is to this day the most cutting edge, highest level of quality and service real estate practices. Because if you're not operating on the elite level there, then you're not in business there. And what it inspired me to do is go, how do I bring that level of service, the multi-million dollar home listing experience to back then $220,000
Right.
listing experience. Yes. And as simple as that sounds, I mean, there was a lot to figure out because there's a reason why people could spend and invest and do what they can on a multi-million dollar property versus one for 200,000. But it put me on a journey to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, cool, cool. Yeah, it's crazy how that's changed,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Value. All right. So what do you do? What do you do in your free time when you're not working with clients? What do you enjoy doing?
Man, so what's great is like I'm a grandpa now, which is crazy because
No
I
way.
feel yeah, I am. I'm a grandfather, which is crazy. In
Wow.
fact, my granddaughter's 1 year old as of just a few days ago. I'm always with my family, man. Those are my best friends. My little ones. We have three kids, 22, 8, and 10. So, we have a big gap between, and I love them all for all their right reasons. But man, I still love being like, for me, I feel like I'm still a young dad because my kids are kind of young. And then I have a granddaughter. But yeah, most of the time I'm not doing real estate, I'm with the family. I love barbecuing. COVID changed me that way. I've always loved the idea of being like a barbecue person. And I never really cooked at all because my wife is like the most amazing cook ever. But COVID inspired me, like, man, I'm gonna figure out how to be a grill master, and I'm
Barbecue
not. But
master.
it's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So I love to barbecue at least once a week. Barbecue is not my wife's favorite at all, but she's pretty cool with me doing it at least once a week. I love playing the guitar. I've been doing that for a long time. I taught myself from watching Dave Matthews Band DVDs.
No way.
Yeah, yeah. I'd
Wow,
sit
dude,
there
that's
and
cool.
start, stop, trying to figure out what fret that finger was
Chords
on
and
and what in
stuff.
the world did that guy just do. And whew, in any event, still horrible, but I love it. It's just a lot of fun for me. It's a way to kind of unwind. And then outside of that, man, I'm just a huge football fan and MMA fan. So that's usually about what I'm doing outside of selling houses. And what's great is that real estate has allowed me to have a life that has a lot of autonomy. I take my kids to school every single morning and walk them to school. We get to talk about things almost on a daily basis, like something we call awesome sauce, right? And I ask my kids almost every day, how do you make awesome sauce? Believe in yourself, work hard, and visualization. And I'm starting to see like that's showing up in their lives too. Like they're figuring things out. And it's when they're under pressure and hey, they need to struggle sometimes, as long as I equip them with the tools to find themselves out of it. So like I love my mornings. I know if I had a different career or job, they may not see me every single morning walking them to school. I love that when they get off of school, I'm right there with them. How was your day? Sometimes me and my son will go and work on his catching of the football because he's really into flag football right now. And then there's other times, Rick, where it's dinner and the phone rings and I'm like, all right, guys, I need to grab this one. And they give me that grace because they understand that's kind of the dynamics of the career that I have. I'm not always around on weekends, right? But man, when we have our time, we have our time and it works wonderfully.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice having the flexibility to be there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you. And we have that age spread too. So I'm right there
Nice.
with you, dude. um, let's see. What is your personal mantra or philosophy that keeps you motivated in this competitive industry?
Well, I'm going to tell you two of them because one keeps me motivated and the other one I think just really keeps me focused on the right things. So the one that keeps me motivated is really simple, man. Like my growing up as a kid, my My grandfather, because of our family dynamics, my grandfather treated me like his son, and he loved me like his son, and so did my grandma, and my mom. And I just have a lot of them, and my uncles. I have so many people in my life that gave me so much love, like I could have never asked for it. I think my childhood is like a fairy tale, no joke. And then they also believed in me from really early on, like in a way that I could not understand. And almost in a way that as I was coming into adulthood, it kind of freaked me out. Like I didn't know how I was going to prove them right because they had so much faith and believe in me. I'm like, how am I gonna, like, what do I gotta do to like prove them right? Because I could feel just them lifting me up always. And I've realized, like, in my career, if I can help people one off, I don't need to stand on like a mountain and like save a country. But if I can go and have a legitimate impact on different people throughout my career, that's the legacy that I'm holding strong for my family. So at the end of the day, that's what keeps me motivated. That if I can help impact someone's life in a positive way, then I'm feeding right back to that same legacy that I'm so proud and honored to come from, and I'm moving it forward. The other kind of mantra, if you will, that I live by, Rick, is really being habitual. And I'll give you a quick analogy to understand what I mean by that. I want to have a real estate experience or a workflow that's a habit. Okay. And when we talk about doing the right activities, right? Making your phone calls, knocking on your doors, doing the right things that lead to more relationships, which ultimately lead to more business. I'm creating an experience for myself that's similar to brushing my teeth in the morning. Could you imagine if something happened in the morning for you, Rick, where you had to run out of the house and go live your day and you weren't able to brush your teeth? Like, how might that change your experience out there in the world? You'd probably be super aware of it, right? You'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm blatantly aware
Yeah.
that I didn't brush my
Preoccupied with
teeth.
it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Furthermore, if you had even a 10-minute opportunity to go and fix that problem, you probably go and do it, right?
Absolutely.
I want to make my experience in real estate, and I'm getting there, so that I'm doing the right things, talking to the people in my sphere of influence daily, consistently, making the right calls, knocking on doors, so that it's similar to brushing my teeth. What does that mean? Number one, if I don't do it that day, it's going to freak me out. I got to go make it happen. Okay. Number two, and this is great for a lot of agents out there, think about this brushing your teeth. Maybe when we were kids, we hated it. Some of us, right? And it was like, oh my gosh, I have to brush my teeth and it's a pain in the side and I have to floss, blah, blah, blah. And we gripe about it. But as adults now, it's like, this is what we do. It's just part of life. We get up and we do this thing. Okay. It's the same activity, but it doesn't hurt anymore. It doesn't freak us out. It doesn't make us mull over our morning. Think about if you were doing the right activities every single day, like cold calls, for example, right? Whatever it is that you're doing to build your business, but it was so automatic, like brushing your teeth. So that's the mantra that I live by now to make sure that I'm doing the right things that lead to the right lead indicators that ultimately consistently bring the right lag indicators.
Yeah, it's those muscles, right? You're
Bingo.
creating muscles and it just becomes memory after that, for sure.
Bingo.
Let's see. Okay, where can listeners connect with you? And what projects are you currently excited about?
Yeah, great question. So, yeah, people can follow me on all the socials, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Joseph R. Limo, easiest way to find me. I do a Monday mastermind for the agents that I work with every single Monday at 10 a.m. I love doing that. And both the social media and my Monday mastermind led to most recently, as I mentioned, I'm a real estate broker, active in the field, love working with my clients, and I'll never give that up ever. Coach other agents, real estate professor, and then a new company reached out to me called Forum, and they said, we see that you focus on newer agents in the business. We can't find anywhere else in the country where there's a coach who really specializes in brand new agents. And so, first quarter of next year, I'm launching a peer group across the nation for brand new real estate agents. And I'm super fired up about that. Like the new agent and establishing the foundation of their career. That's where my heart is, man, when it comes to coaching. So, really fired up about that.
That's outstanding, man. I know as a new agent, I totally could have used that. Life would have
All of
been
us could.
really different for me. So, well, cool, dude. Joseph, it was awesome. I could have talked with you or asked you questions all day, man. Maybe we'll have to do a second episode or something at some point. But thanks for coming on today. I really appreciate it, man. And I hope you and your family have a great holiday.
Likewise, Rick. Thank you, man. Absolute honor. And man, I'm excited for an invitation to come back anytime. Thank you again.
Outstanding. Thanks a lot, man.